Welcome to I Hate James Dobson. 1 year in, and I hate James Dobson more than ever.
I hate her, James Dobson. No, cut that. That's
I
terrible.
hatest James Dobson. Welcome to I Hate James Dobson. My name is Jake. I am a former evangelical turned queer sex therapist. And today, I'm lucky to be joined by the lagniappe liberated lady, a leader and a learner who lives, laughs, and loves, the legendary Brooke. Hi, Brooke.
Hey, you already did L.
I did?
And we did N in the last episode.
Yep, probably.
So I need you to, on the fly,
But I
come up with the O's.
But I really
Nope.
liked lagniappe.
Yep, but you got to do the O's.
Oh, we're going to go oscillating because that's just the first word that came to my mind.
Oscillating, outstanding.
The outstanding, outrageous, overcome with emotion, awesome but with an O, Brooke.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Brooke.
Hi.
I learned a new word for this, lagniappe.
Yeah, lagniappe. What's that?
I mean, something gained by way of good measure. So, like, you order lobster and the waiter brings out a free little thing of butter for free, just like a little treat.
Oh, a lagniappe.
Yeah.
Like the time I got 4 fillets of tilapia for free on my doorstep.
Yes, and you are that to this podcast.
Yeah, 4 fillets of tilapia. Thank you.
Brooke, how are you doing today?
Yeah, we're both doing great.
We're coming fresh off of part 1.
Yeah, we're still drinking out of the same cups.
We did take a half-hour break to, like, decompress.
Yeah. And because I am all kinds of things, but some of them are a Virgo and a Slytherin, Jake very sweetly checked on me to make sure I was okay and apologized for a trauma dumping. And then I was like, that's fine. And then just trauma dumped all over Jake. So you're welcome.
Friendship is Venmoing the same $5 back and forth, but with emotions.
That's so good. That's so real. So anyway, we're doing great. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Feeling good. Feeling flirty. Feeling fun. Feeling sexy.
Why?
I always think of a Katya quote where it's like, I'm feeling fat, but a little bit thin.
I love her so much.
I watched All Stars 2 with my boyfriend. It was the first Drag Race season that I showed him, which is also one of the best seasons of reality TV that exists. And he fell in love with Katya. And we watched All Stars 3, and he said, that was bad.
Yeah.
And it was.
Yeah.
Brooke, easy, casual segue.
Yeah, casual.
How did you find your sense of spirituality?
What?
This episode's all about reconstruction, building something new. You didn't have the same religious trauma that I had, but you grew up in the world. You've been around religion and spirituality. And
Yeah.
was it just like trial and error? Was it...
Well, you are
vibing?
working under an assumption
Uh-huh.
that I have a solid sense of spirituality.
I didn't say solid.
I don't know. Here's the deal. We know about my history. I went to church sometimes with my dad. It was Episcopalian. I was in the Christmas choir.
Mm-hmm.
We've
Pissed off angel.
Pissed off angel. That's right. If I find that picture, will you post it?
I would love to.
Okay, good. But as an adult, let's see. I was like angry atheist in college, as we all are, because liberal arts school.
Sure.
And then I didn't care about any of it because I was in my 20s and you're going to live forever.
Yes, I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Shut up. And then I was like, Quakers?
Interesting.
Yeah, I saw it on 6 Feet Under.
Okay. Fair.
And not only that, but when I walked in the door of the Quaker church, which, have you ever been to a Quaker church?
I have.
This one was at the Japanese American Association in Uptown.
Interesting.
It's just like in a classroom. It's not like a church.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in and it was clearly a group of people who all knew each other, like 9 people.
Yep.
And who were there every week. And so I was just like a complete stranger walking in. And someone said, are you here for the Quaker church? And I went, yeah, it's my first time. And they went, 6 Feet Under?
Oh my God.
And I was like, yeah, 6 Feet Under did a great job selling Quakerism to everybody.
Apparently.
Okay, so I did that for a while. They were very sweet, but I was like, this is Jesus repackaged into something else, so didn't want to hang. Then later went to the Buddhist temple in Chicago, which is located next to a smoked meats building, which is kind of a level of irony I never
That's
stopped
hilarious.
laughing at. Yeah, and that was lovely. I learned a lot about meditation and focus and stillness and all of that, but it didn't feel sincere to me to be, white lady at the Buddhist temple. No offense to other white ladies in the Buddhist temple, but it just didn't. It didn't feel.
Didn't feel true to you.
Yeah, I mean, it felt helpful, but it didn't feel meaningful to me.
That's fair. I like that.
And so what I will say is, I don't know. I don't know that I have found it. Often I feel self-conscious or sort of cringy or any of those sort of words when I'm like in a group setting where we're all supposed to be feeling something. Right? Mm-hmm. So I think the most spiritual I feel is when... Am I taking over the whole... I'm sorry.
No, go for it. You
asked me like one little question. And
I asked you a huge question. Talk to me about the answer to religion. Go for it.
But I think I have these little like moments in time where time slows down a little bit and I'll just be like, oh my God, I really love that person. Or I really love my house. Or the sky is so beautiful or whatever. And they just feel a little different than other moments. Yeah. They're very intimate. And whenever I have that, it feels, or like I have a sense of being able to see my whole life like in the past and be like, whoa, my life is so beautiful and cool and like all this. There are very specific moments that I don't really know how to explain. And that's, I guess, where I feel spirituality.
I love that. Mm-hmm. That I think is what I struggle with when trying to ask, maybe not as direct of a question as this to other people, is that like, they feel like they need to have an answer, and kind of the whole point about religion and spirituality is like, I don't fucking know. Yeah. And so the like, I don't want to try a little bit of this, a little bit of this. I don't know, but it's this like feeling. I think that is just the most honest answer that all of us could get to. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that there's any kind of one thing I believe. I can't say that I have any idea about what happens, like, Mm-hmm. And as a grief therapist, it is an interesting thing to sort of think about and how to like comfort people without this framework, really. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's just these moments where I can tell that it's the type of moment I'll remember forever. And it doesn't have to be very powerful, but that's what it is.
I love that.
Thanks.
Well, today we're going to be talking about my story of deconstructing from evangelical Christianity, but more of the building something. So it's a lot, honestly, like there's a lot of things that I heard you say that I resonate with, like trying stuff out, not being totally sure. It's like, I guess it's this like feeling that I have, but I don't know how to name it. And it's like that resonates so much with me.
If you make me cry again.
I make no promises. I'm a really good writer.
You are a really good writer. I want you to, really quick, I'm so sorry, you can cut this out, but I want you to know that earlier I was in the kitchen with and she was like, oh, you're recording a podcast tonight? And I was like, yeah. But I saw a glimpse of something on TikTok, so I'm pretty sure it's just going to be a funny one.
And it was. We had good old guffaws.
Yeah, we sure did.
Cried, but only from laughing.
Go on.
Again, I will reiterate that this is my story. Some things will be generalizable, some things won't be. I do hope that sharing my story will be insightful and make people feel less alone. Maybe you can learn from each other. But at the end of the day, this is my opinion!
What is that from?
I only know it from Bob the Drag Queen. I'm sure it's from something else, but...
It's from something else. I can't think of what it is.
Editing Jake here. It is literally 4:30 a.m. This episode comes out at 8 a.m. And I got a note from Brooke to let you know that this is a quote from the Real Housewives of Orange County. So, you're welcome. When last we left, I was zooming out into the skyline at the end of Defying Gravity. I had come out as gay halfway through high school. All of the gay kids didn't like me because I used to be a bigot. All of the Christian kids didn't like me because I was a faggot. I was both slowly and quickly kicked out of the church. After a year and a half of immense turmoil, I'd begun to stabilize. And we left when I was starting off in college, ready for the next chapter of my life to begin. Last time I told more or less one coherent narrative, with some musical inspiration interwoven. The process of reconstructing, building something new, a life apart from evangelicalism, doesn't fit as neatly into one direct story. I experienced a lot, I learned a lot, and a lot of the change was rather gradual and piecemeal, which doesn't make for a compelling 1-hour story, in my opinion. So instead of telling one linear story, I want to present my story today as an internet-friendly numbered list. The 11 lessons of my deconstruction, or 11 rules for life. Yes. It's a Jordan Peterson joke. Jordan Peterson, the psychologist from Canada, wrote a book. Also, our Canadian readers encouraged me to be more mean to Jordan Peterson. So,
okay. Thanks, Canada.
We got some really interesting feedback from our Canadian listeners. Also, so sorry to Canada about what America's doing to you.
Canada, this is embarrassing.
I tried my best.
We really did, but we're can't wait to have you as a state.
God. We have to move on.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Rule number 1. We have fucked up relationships with emotions. Brooke, how do you see our culture misunderstanding emotions?
Great. I'm so glad you asked. Thank you for these easy, light questions tonight.
Uh-huh.
What? Say it again.
How does our culture fuck up emotions?
Non-stop.
Non-stop.
Our culture fucks up emotions by, I think one of the big things is by insisting on arbitrary gender roles. Right? Mm-hmm. So women are this, men are this, and that whole sort of thing that's pushed on you.
Women feel this, men feel
yes, yeah. From birth, from before birth, right? This Americanism, I think, is a big part of it. We're tough, we're resilient, all of that.
It's very prescriptive. Here's what you should feel.
Yes.
And then if you don't, you're wrong.
Yeah, and then I think there's this interesting thing, too, of but here are some emotional things that are okay to feel emotion about. Dogs and military people returning home.
Military people returning home to their dogs.
Yeah. We talked about this already. Cut this. But did you ever see the one where it's a cat?
No, we haven't talked about this.
We haven't. People made these videos of military people coming home to their cat. And it's real military people. It's military people with a sense of humor. And the cat is literally hey. And it's licks its asshole and jumps away. It's so funny.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. Anyway, bad.
So prescribing what you can feel, making it very narrow.
Yes.
Very arbitrary. What you can feel and when you can feel it. Yeah. That fucks up because emotions don't work that way.
And also, other cultures have so many other beautiful words for really complex emotions. Mm-hmm. We literally have sad, bad. I always think it's interesting when I'm first meeting with a client, I'll be like, well, how did that make you feel? And often the first things they'll say was not good. Right? And it's
that's not on my feelings wheel.
Right. That's the absence of a feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To that end, I do use a feelings wheel. So a feelings wheel for our reader, Brooke is pointing to one right here in the office. A feelings wheel is just a circle with a bunch of different emotion words kind of broken down. So do you feel bad? Sure. But do you feel nervous or anxious or despair? The different types of bad. It just helps people increase their emotional vocabulary because a lot of people have a very limited emotional vocabulary because it's just, I feel bad, not good. Good. Mm. I do not let my clients answer good. That's not on the wheel. Pick something else.
Yeah, and I think there's also a certain amount of sweep under the rug of your feelings that goes on. So
yes,
we're not really taught to learn much more besides good, bad, angry, sad.
Yes. Mm-hmm. We devalue emotions and overpraise logic, but we are also primarily motivated by emotions and not logic. Here are these things that you are feeling all of the time that rule how you're acting. But don't think about that. Sweep those under the rug and be logical, despite that's not how most people work.
Yeah, that's right. You have a lot of clients that want to know the why of things.
Mm-hmm. I love insight. I love trying to figure out the why, but also sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes you just are, and let's go from that.
Right, yeah.
Emotions are just information. To actually be logical, we have to factor in emotions to the final result. Something that really just made something click for me that I've explained to clients and they don't seem to care all that much. Emotions are primarily somatic experiences. We feel them in our body and then our brain retroactively assigns them meaning. And it can be, that's why it's I'm feeling something, but I don't know what. Your body's having a sensation and your brain isn't sure how to categorize it. Similarly, you can activate emotions. One of my professors in undergrad told a story of a person who wasn't able to exercise because their heart started racing and they got sweaty and their brain was oh, we're having anxiety now, and it would induce them having a panic attack.
Yeah. So
it's these somatic experiences.
Mm-hmm.
In DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy, they talk about making decisions from a wholly emotional place as problematic, but they also talk about making decisions from a wholly intellectual place as problematic. Only when you can put those two parts of yourself in conversation with each other can you make a more informed decision.
Wise mind.
DPT calls it wise mind. Absolutely. You should build a relationship with your emotions. Try to understand them. Tolerate difficult ones. This is the majority of the work that I do with people in therapy, especially people who are new to therapy for like a year. We do stress tolerance. We do building your emotional vocabulary, somatic work, right? Relatedly, grieving is messy. Brooke, you know this better than I do, but there is no right or wrong way to grieve.
No.
What comes up for you and what you do with it. It's messy.
Yeah. There's no stages of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no right or wrong way. And there's no timeline.
In one of the initial drafts of these episodes, I tried to like lay it out in the stages of grief, just for shits and giggles. And even for this story, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
The stages of grief theoretically are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance.
Yeah. Those are all things that can happen when you're grieving. But those are actually pretty clearly the linear stages of dying.
Yes.
That was developed by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And they were developed for dying people in hospice care. And those actually usually, and again, not all the time, but those usually are the stages for someone who has like terminal illness and is dying.
Yeah.
But they're not actually the stages of grieving. And Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her predecessor, David Kessler, and a lot of other people are very clear about that, to be like, they worked with her, right? And they're like,
mm-hmm.
that is not what she was saying.
Mm-hmm.
Grief, people feel like I haven't moved to this third stage or this fourth stage. And it's like, yeah, that's not how it happens.
Mm-hmm. And you can feel multiple things at different times. You were talking today, earlier during one of our lunch breaks at work, like stages of grief, but like a little bit tongue in cheek, but like you make it different. Like,
yeah. Oh, I was saying there's also just like, I'm ready to be over this.
Yeah.
Right. Or like getting annoyed by your own grief is one of them. Bittersweet, I think, is a big one. When you reach bittersweet, where you can think about things and feel sort of loving as opposed to pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is like years of grieving, right? I come from a school of like grief doesn't end. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
But it changes. Right?
That's a big part of what we're talking about here. Yeah. My grief in this part of the story, at least, was like grieving the fact that I felt like I'd been abandoned, grieving the life that I had planned to have and no longer could access.
That's a big part of grief.
Grieving for the God that I no longer believed in. This grief was most frequently presented as anger and spite. And I was frequently told, both explicitly and implicitly, just to stop being so angry.
Oh, God. Easy.
Yeah, right, things. Just stop being depressed. I didn't think about that. Some people said I was being unfair, the not all Christians kind of crowd.
Yeah.
Some people were too triggered by my own big emotions, especially normies who didn't get religious trauma. Some people were just uncomfortable with negativity in general. It is kind of a buzzkill to make jokes about your religious trauma to strangers at a Halloween party in college. Not based on a real example. I became very protective of my anger and grief. I was keenly aware of when people tried to minimize it for their own comfort, and those people did not often last long in my life. To this end, I spent most of my freshman year just by myself, but by choice rather than feeling rejected. I needed time and space just to have all of my big feelings without trying to worry about how other people would react to them. And I found a lot of catharsis in blasphemy, regaining a sense of agency over the things and beliefs and people who had hurt me so deeply. This meant tearing out chapters in Leviticus from hotel room Bibles. It meant buying merch from the Satanic Temple, which I knew would be shocking to evangelicals who would see it. This is not a pro-Satanic Temple podcast. They're problematic in their own way. That's not the point of this episode. One Christmas, I went back to New Directions, the church I was kicked out of. In protest, I spent the service in the lobby, defacing little booklets that they had for people to grab about, like, what is grief? The one that I will send you pictures of was called, Can You Change If You're Gay?
Oh, my God. You just went back there by yourself and vandalized their shit.
No, my family was going to the church, and they made me go to Christmas Eve service there. This was my act of protest. I just sent you pictures of one of the ones that I defaced. There we go.
Did you write "You Are Beautiful" on it?
I did.
Aw.
It's okay to be gay. Love yourself, God does. I wrote the number for the Trevor Project on one of the pages.
Oh.
On the cover, it says, Can you change if you're gay? And I wrote no, and that's okay.
I wonder if anyone found these. And
I'm sure the church found them.
No, I I wonder if like some gay kid found these.
Yeah, maybe.
Let's just pretend that happened.
Leaning into taking my anger out on these things, not people, but these things, was incredibly catharsis. An honorable mention to Dragula, season 1.
Yeah.
Dragula is a reality competition show like RuPaul's Drag Race, but this is the edgier side of drag. Their tenets are filth, horror, and glamour. And at the end of season 1, the final 3 contestants had to do looks representing filth, horror, and glamour. One of the contestants, Melissa B. Fierce, had a filth look that is amazing. It's shocking and deliciously blasphemous. It remains one of my favorite drag performances of all times. It was sacred, or perhaps desecrated, to me when I saw it in freshman year. Reader, if you are feeling like you're in the mood for some intense blasphemy, I recommend looking it up. It's the one where she has...
Yep.
It's incredible.
It's so good. Dragula's so good. That's where I fell in love with Landon Cider.
Oh my god, Landon Cider! Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you also just Google Landon Cider wolf costume and then ask yourself how queer you are and what type of queer you are.
A lesbian dressed as a man.
Dressed as a wolf. It's very complicated. It's confusing for everyone.
It's confusing for everyone, and I love it. My grieving process, and most people's, but mine specifically, was messy and uncouth and not for everyone. But blasphemy was an integral part of this. The musician Semler, who we have talked about before, I did a piano version of one of their songs, has a line in the song Bethlehem that says, "Fuck a savior, and if she can't take it, then she's small." Oh. And as far as I'm aware, Semler is still a Christian. It is this, like, moving through anger and just being... Evangelicalism, you have to really, like, focus yourself and perform certain things, perform emotions. And part of a lot of people's deconstruction is just letting it all go and just doing the thing, saying the thing. That can be incredibly cathartic. Also, fear is not a sustainable motivator. Dobson, evangelicals, fascists operate on fear, and fear is a base primal instinct that is really easy to tap into. This is how you can get effective override, affective with an A, not E, about emotions when you're so flooded with emotions that the logical part of your brain gets turned way down. Fear is great for that, and it's usually a very effective motivator, and it burns you the fuck out. On like a biological level. Usually during an isolated stressful event, your body's stress response is activated, your sympathetic nervous system. This is where you get your adrenaline and your cortisol. When the stressor passes, your parasympathetic nervous system activates, the part of your body responsible for rest and digestion. The stress hormones are flushed out of your system and your body ideally returns to some kind of baseline. Prolonged stress means prolonged exposure to cortisol and other stress hormones. This chronic exposure can lead to muscle tension, digestive problems, headaches, weight fluctuations, sleeping issues, heart disease, susceptibility to cancer, high blood pressure, stroke, and so on. Further, prolonged and severe stress, especially in childhood but not exclusively, can actually blunt your body's stress response. People with chronic stress may actually have lower levels of cortisol at rest because their bodies aren't actually able to identify what is actually a threat. If everything is a threat, nothing is. It fucks you up and burns you out. Leaving the church, and I left in around 2015, so right as Trump was coming into the mainstream, it was really easy to switch what I was scared of. Maybe I wasn't going to hell, but I now got to be afraid of a fascist threat. And in my humble opinion now, that is a much more reasonable fear. But reasonable or not, just responding out of fear isn't enough. It only gets you so far, and when you get there, you're going to be exhausted and lonely. This is why I'm a big believer in it's not just enough to say something is bad, you have to build something new on top of it. In marriage and family therapy, we talk about first versus second order change. First order change is the system stays more or less the same, but you swap the labels. I'm still operating out of fear, but instead of hell, it's Trump. Second order change is a change to the fundamental rules of the system. I had to find some other thing to motivate me. When I stopped being ruled by fear, I felt better, lighter, less chest pressure. There are still things to be scared of, but, like all emotions, fear is not inherently a problem. It's just information. But I am not primarily motivated by fear. I fight back against Trump and Dobson not because I'm scared, because I want to make the world better and kinder. I'm not just reacting and responding out of fear. I do still get stressed, and I have diagnosable anxiety, But every moment of every day isn't spent feeling watched and critiqued. Like I did when I was an evangelical. I actually get times of rest and to be alone. I also have good coping skills to complete the stress response cycle. Things like crying, getting a hug from a loved one, channeling emotions through art, and moving my body are all ways to help my body understand that the stress is over, filter out the cortisol, and return to rest. Lesson number 2, black and white thinking is always bad.
Yeah, always. Always. I get it. Yeah.
It's very easy to fit people into 2 boxes. These are the good people, these are the bad. These are the people going to heaven, these are the people going to hell. This is a sin, this is not a sin. And all or nothing thinking, black and white thinking, is great for control and fear.
Absolutely.
You're either in or you're out, and if you're out, you're fucking gone. This is what happened to me. I went from being a very treasured member of the church to person non grata, get the fuck out of here. But real life doesn't work like that. Very, very few things are black and white, and even those things can be up for debate. Evangelicals love to cry wolf about moral relativism, and that if you don't have Jesus, you have nothing stopping you from murdering whoever you want. We need laws based on God for civility, etc. I will have you know, I murder exactly how many people I want. Which is no one.
Right.
I have some anger, but like, murder seems messy, and they have a body. And
Oh, God. What a...
with paperwork.
Ugh.
As we've talked about with Dobson, everyone engages in moral relativistic thinking. Famously, one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt not murder. Not kill, because there's a lot of God-sanctioned killing in the Bible. But what distinguishes killing from murder? When does it become a sin? I looked into this. There is not an answer. There's no answer. The main theological thing I found is if you get blood guilt is what I found. The idea of you feel guilty because you killed someone and therefore that's when it becomes a sin. But I think that's a terrible...
Blood guilt.
Yeah, first of all,
Ugh.
I would listen to a band called Blood Guilt. But, not everyone feels guilt about murder. That's kind of a problem. It doesn't mean it's not a sin.
Yeah. I mean, let's just ask our good friend, Ted Bundy.
We get back to it. Well, no, he said he was sorry to Dobson. He said he regretted it because of the porn.
Oh, right, yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, the blood
All
guilt.
comes back to Ted Bundy, doesn't it? You can have your own definition of the difference between murder and killing. That's not really my point. I think it's an interesting philosophical question, but it is inherently unanswerable. There is no finite specific definition that everyone can use 100% of the time to mark the difference. Why is modern abortion horrific, but the Bible's recipe for abortion okay? Did you know that there's a recipe for abortion in the Bible?
No, I did not.
Yes, there is. And Numbers 5. It's called sometimes the trial of bitter water. It was used in the book of Numbers in the Old Testament to determine if a woman had committed adultery. Quote, if you have gone astray while married to your husband, and you have made yourself impure by having sexual relationships with a man other than your husband, the priest, this is a priest saying it, is then to put the woman under this curse. May the Lord cause you to become a curse among your people, when he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell. May this water that brings a curse enter your body so that your abdomen swells and your womb miscarries. That's an abortion.
Yeah, that's called abortion.
I've had Christians try to fight me and tell me that's not an abortion.
What do they say it is?
Not anything logical or coherent. So why is abortion bad, but then this whole ass thing that happens in the Bible, which is just an abortion, okay?
Okay.
Moral relativism. Everyone does it. Black and white thinking doesn't really exist here. They also love to make pretty clear things seem nuanced when it doesn't work for them. For example, Matthew 19:24, Jesus says, you might be familiar with this, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven.
I love that you said I might be familiar with it.
Have you not heard that?
I don't think so.
Interesting.
Well, maybe a version of it, yeah.
The evangelical churches I grew up in, a number of them really tried to ignore or obscure that verse. My favorite excuse is they say is that there's a gate going into the city of Jerusalem that used to be called the Eye of the Needle and was kind of narrow, but not impossible. So they're like, it's a little bit hard for a rich guy to get into the kingdom of heaven. It's just so self-evidently silly. And
right.
But evangelicalism is so inherently tied in with capitalism that it kind of necessitates that they make excuses for things to find nuance where it doesn't exist. In therapy, we talk a lot about both and.
Yeah.
The ability to hold two contrasting ideas at the same time. In this time of my deconstruction, I wanted to be alone, and I also felt really lonely. Less intense example, RuPaul is a fracking magnate who dabbles in problematic beliefs like transphobia, and she's done amazing and world-changing work for the queer community. We can hold both of them.
Yeah, and the therapy version that I work with a lot is you can love your parents and your family and get along with them and go home and visit them and process through some of the fucked up shit that happened to you from them when you were a kid at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Which is hard for people to believe or understand that those can coexist.
Yeah, they don't cancel each other out. Sometimes people feel like a sense of cognitive dissonance where these two beliefs are in contrast with each other, and they look for ways to resolve that, but it's okay that you have two contrasting ideas. Life's hard and complex.
Yeah.
Also, I said transphobia. Are you familiar with this anecdote?
No.
So RuPaul has said some problematic and transphobic things back in the day. She used to be very against having trans people on the show for reasons that don't matter and are kind of gross. There's trans people there now. I'm not trying to cancel RuPaul. But in trying to show support, RuPaul tweeted what she thought was the trans flag, but she'd clearly just Googled it, and it was actually for trains.
Stop it.
I'm not even kidding.
You stop it. There's a trains flag?
There sure is a trains flag.
Oh my God. Did I ever tell you about that time my friend and I were in Boys Town?
You Google RuPaul trains flag. It's incredible. Go for it.
Oh my God. We were in Boys Town and I was trying to be so cool. And we looked up at this flag and I was like, is that the leather flag or is that like the bear's flag? Like for being a bear. And my friend looked at me and went, that is the German flag.
Incredible. Vexillology gets you every time. The tweet is, in the 10 years we've been casting Drag Race, the only thing we've ever screamed for is charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent. That will never change. And then this is the...
Oh my God. That is not... RuPaul doesn't even know what the trans flag looks like.
I think she does now.
I love the... Can you please tell the readers what the trains flag looks like?
It's like a lime green, a forest green, then like a yellow kind of stacked vertically on top of each other.
Oh my God, it looks nothing like the trans flag. That's so funny.
Train landscape. Sorry, it's a painting, not a flag, but whatever.
Still.
It's very funny to me.
Yeah.
Lesson number 3. Everyone is capable of growth and change, even if some people never actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, I changed.
Yeah.
In like a pretty big way. I am thankful that who I am today is not judged on who I was in my time as an evangelical, in my time as an angsty teenager. To quote 10th Avenue North, I am more than the choices that I've made, and I'm more than the sum of my past mistakes. This is also a philosophy that I kind of have to bring to therapy, right? People come to therapy to change, and I have to believe that change is possible for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You also are never too old to change, in small and big ways. I've had people throughout their entire life say, well, I guess I'm just too old to make things different now. Be like, you could be 67 or 17. You take your time, you change when you need to.
Also, thank you for thinking 67 is the oldest you could possibly be. And
yes, that's what I was saying. And 17 is the youngest.
And you're never too old to go to therapy. Mm-hmm. I've seen a lot of people go at later stages of their life and get a lot out of it.
In 2022, Florida governor and a man who loves a sensible pump, Ron DeSantis, signed the so-called Don't Say Gay bill into effect, which effectively criminalized being queer in school. It was primarily targeted at teachers, but impacted everyone in schools. It was also the premise for a wave of book bans. As is wont to happen in fascism, this kicked off a wave of similar bills and tactics all over the country, including the area where I went to high school and my parents still lived. I was really upset by this news. Yet another sign that this fucking wicked little town actively wanted to hurt people like me. I couldn't stand by, but I didn't know what to do. I don't have any influence in that town. It hates me and I it. But it literally hit so close to home. My family are often leaders in their communities. We get involved. This often meant volunteering at church, but also Boy Scouts, at school, and sports teams, etc. By 2022, my relationship with my parents had improved significantly. We'd done a lot of repair, not just making things okay. The hurt of coming out hadn't been erased, but something new had been built on top. Still, those wounds remained as scars, present reminders of what had happened and theoretically might happen again. But my parents had grown. I had grown. I'd been in a lot of therapy. I learned to ask for what I needed, even if my voice was shaking. And so, with great fear, but also great hope, I told my parents about how the Don't Say Gay movement was coming to their town and asked them to do something, anything about it. I didn't know what they could or would be willing to do, but I knew I needed them to do something, to put love into action for me. And reader, they did. My parents used their influence in their church to start a support group for parents of queer people. It doesn't fight legislation or change the makeup of the school board, sure, but it provides a safe space for families to better learn how to care for and love their own queer kids, to not be alone in what can be an incredibly lonely process for evangelical families. Part of the reason my parents struggled so much was because of that sense of isolation, and they really needed support. It doesn't change the world, but it meant the world to me. It was and is such a clear, wonderful, meaningful sign of how we have all changed. That would not have been fathomable when I was coming out, that they would be such an ally, they'd go out of their way, stick their neck out for queer families. It speaks to the strength of our relationship, the maturity with which they approach queer issues, and a lot of their own deconstructing of homophobia and transphobia. People can grow and change. Reconciliation and repair isn't a given, but it is possible.
Are your parents... They're not at the same church, are they?
No.
Okay.
They started going to a new church, very thankfully. Number 4. Queerness is a gift.
Oh, yeah.
When I was growing up, I hated being queer. It made me feel like a monster. After coming out, I moved more towards acceptance. It was just a part of me that I couldn't change, and it was okay. Now, I am so happy I am queer. It is such a gift. And I'm specifically saying queerness and not being gay for a reason. Author Bell Hooks put it best, quote, "Queer not as being about who you're having sex with, although that can be a dimension of it, but queer as being about the self that is at odds with everything around it and that has to invent and create and find a place to speak and thrive and to live." When I came out, I had to ask some very hard existential questions. What did it mean to love? What are the differences between men and women? What is being straight? Everyone's a little bit gay, right? How do I fit into this culture, this legacy of people I've never met and I'm not related to? What even counts as sex? What's monogamy? Do I even want monogamy? Why do evangelicals hate queer people? How can I make sense of the trauma I experienced, but so many people seem oblivious to the threat of evangelicalism? Thankfully, my undergraduate school was gay. I picked it apart because it was consistently in the top 10 schools in the nation for LGBT students.
Where'd you go?
University of Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
Many of my professors, bosses, and peers were queer, which was a very stark difference from a lifelong feeling of feeling starved for connections with people like me. While at school, I got a minor in LGBT studies. I literally have a degree in being gay.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I like to minor in myself.
I got to take classes in LGBT literature, healthcare, sociology, art. It was honestly like really pretty amazing.
Cool.
And when I graduated, I did enough official gay stuff that I got to wear a fancy rainbow stole at my graduation. Really cool.
That's awesome.
Queerness to me is a gift because it allowed me to ask myself questions that anyone can ask, but many people don't. It gave me a confidence in myself. If I could survive coming out at 16, ain't nothing no one can do to me now. It means I get to live in ways that are full of intention. It's not just what is given to me. It means I have the ability to say no to anything, and so my yeses are real. It means I got to listen to people whose voices are usually lost in the mainstream stories. When I was an undergrad, I had the great fortune of joining the drag activism group, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence.
Yeah, you did.
Brooke, I'm sure you know about them. Who are the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence?
I know about them from you. Well, no, that's not true. I've seen them around since I moved to Chicago in the 1600s. But they are drag queen nuns. Mm-hmm. And they are so good and so funny.
They're a group of drag activists who generally dress as queer nuns. Their iconic design choice is like white makeup. For those of you who are in the know of Drag Race, one of the Drag Race winners, Danny Beard, is a sister, and that's why she always wears white face. I loved it. There are chapters all over the U.S. and the world, and I was blessed to join the house in D.C. It helped fill a hole that Boy Scouts left in my life, doing community service. And also, the sisters love to fill a hole.
Tell them your name.
I never became a fully professed sister because I graduated and moved away before I got there, but I was novice sister Sarah Tonin.
I love that.
It's not really an organization that you join to become famous and go on Drag Race. I got to host a small karaoke night at a local gay bar to fundraise for various LGBTQ charities in the area. It's a small bar, tucked away in an alley. There usually wasn't a huge crowd. But I would go from school, take the train with a suitcase full of drag, make a little dressing room for myself in their storage room with my makeup and my mirror propped up on cases of beer and liquor, get myself in my finest drag, and facilitate a nice night of fun and connection for people that I really grew to love. A number of my sisters were older than me, and getting to build connections with them remains one of my greatest blessings. I got to hear their stories about living through the times when you couldn't really be out at all. Hear stories of them living through the AIDS epidemic and how they still carry on and carry the memories of loved ones who passed all these years later. I got to know my history in a real, tangible way, while building such love and respect for people who welcomed me as an equal. But also, I got to collaborate with passionate and badass artists and beautiful souls to make our corner of the world a little bit more colorful. Queerness isn't just who I have sex with or how I have sex. It's why I really dislike the term homosexuality. It centers sex. The politics of sex are important, but queerness is more than the fact that I like to put my dick in dudes. Queerness is about how I approach the world. It's the, why are things like that? And should they be? It's the, I'm through playing by the rules of someone else's game. The, we're all born naked and the rest is drag, stripping of the facade of the ego to reveal and revel in the messy humanity underneath, the kind that some people are scared to investigate. It's an acknowledgement of the fundamental absurd event that is life, while not giving into irony or despair. It's a wink and a nod. It's liberation. Not for nothing, I think deconstructing from evangelical Christianity can be a parallel process to a queer experience. You ask a lot of the same questions. There can be turmoil and grief. There's almost always a coming out period. And most people are much happier on the other side. Lesson number 5. I have the power of creation. The sisters draw specific types of people. I know a number of people who join the sisters who have degrees in theology and make it, quite literally, their ministry. Some of them were the very first people who I felt like really got my experience in religious trauma. Some of them had even been to conversion therapy and had experienced things even beyond what I had experienced. And some of them were still Christians. There's one sister, who's very non-binary, who I spent a lot of time talking about faith and how she could still go to churches after experiencing pretty extreme abuse. Among many other things, she told me, quote, God made people trans for the same reason that he made fruit but not wine and wheat but not bread, so that all of humanity might share in the act of creation. Oh. She didn't come up with this quote, but it was the first time I've heard it, and it's become like a core part of how I navigate the world. I don't often talk about it, I feel, but a really important part of my identity is being non-binary. I know I've mentioned on the podcast before, but for most people it's just like, oh, cool fact. Anyway. I'm not transsexual, meaning I have not medically transitioned in any way, nor do I really want to. I am too lazy to commit to taking hormones. I generally wear a hoodie and jeans, and people treat and read me as a guy, and that's fine enough. My gender identity matters to me and to the people who know me and get me. I've always felt slightly disconnected from masculinity. Things that seemed, at least to come naturally to real men, seemed forced to me. And although I had plenty of girl peers and friends, I never really felt like I was with them either. It always felt like I was out here on my own, doing my own thing, following orders when necessary, sorting myself into the right group. But masculinity can look a billion different ways. There's no wrong way to do masculinity. I just never really felt it. These feelings were confusing for me, and studying gender academically, in my degree in gay, made things even less clear. Masculinity and femininity are social constructs, so can't I just be a guy and make my own masculinity? Isn't it important to reclaim masculinity and provide alternatives to toxic masculinity? Is being non-binary like even a thing? Is it just a thing that any teenagers say for attention? How do I know that I'm non-binary? Ultimately, I realize it doesn't matter. I get to choose who I am to a degree. My experience of gender is important, but the label's somewhat secondary. Identifying as non-binary is a choice that I've made, even if the feelings aren't. It is a choice that I keep making, even though we were living through a pretty significant transphobic cultural backlash. This was me creating myself, communicating to others important parts of my life and my experience. As I created myself, I was creating the life and support systems that I needed. Creating myself also meant choosing what to wear, who my friends were, how to spend my time. Do I want to do drugs or not? What shows do I want to watch? Turns out, instead of Skillet, I really love Lady Gaga in musical theater.
Yay!
I am a stereotype. It's not that I wasn't accountable to anyone. It's that I was accountable for the things that I felt mattered, like hurting the feelings of people I loved, and not for bullshit I didn't care about, like arbitrary definitions of what is sin. I was a new creation, and got to make that mean whatever I wanted it to. We are more than our ideas of ourselves. We contain multitudes. Our ego, our constructed persona, isn't the entirety of who we are. After moving through the most intense anger, I eventually stopped reacting and I was able to be more intentional. I got to create myself anew. I got to create what this next chapter was going to be in my life, and I get to keep creating myself. It's not a process that has an end, much like grief. Lesson number 6. I'm not sure who said it first, but I once saw a TikTok from at like the bug, THA, the bug, who said, quote, I believed in God as a kid because I always felt so moved during worship songs at my megachurch. And then I went to a One Direction concert and felt the same thing and realized I just like live music. So lesson 6 is I just like live music.
Yeah.
Lesson 7. Just moving on. Lesson 7. I am not a bad person. I am not a good person. I am a person doing person things. To me, the most toxic belief of evangelicalism is the strong and kind of unending focus on our inherent sinfulness. When I was young, I thought this meant that I should hate myself. Love your neighbor as yourself was very confusing. Dobson and others use this inherent sinfulness as evidence that we need to abuse children because they deserve it. From the blog post that I ended with last time, one misconception is that a child's misbehavior is primarily caused by external influence. This is a complete denial of the sinful nature that is in every human heart due to the fall. Jesus taught that bad behavior springs from a corrupt heart. Literally, this idea is used to excuse any amount of maltreatment, mistreatment, abuse, whatever of people. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, they're sinners. They kind of deserve it anyway. Early in my deconstruction, I swung the other way pretty hard. I was a good person, goddammit. I had to build self-esteem for maybe the first time ever, so I'm not, like, judging myself for this. And it is a really nice thing to believe. But that good-bad dichotomy is still black and white thinking. It's still abiding by the evangelical morality. It's still that first-order change. As I've mentioned before, I am fundamentally a humanistic therapist. I talk with my clients about conditions of worth. You're only worthy of acceptance if you're masculine enough, for example. Being a good person in this way is still abiding by a condition of worth. I am only worthy of self-esteem if I am good. But who gets to dictate what's good? What happens if I fuck up? How do I recover? Am I unworthy of love until I do? I believe that just by virtue of existing, of being a person, we deserve love and dignity. We deserve respect and empathy, food and shelter, justice and accountability. Even the shittiest, most vile person deserves that. Even Elon Musk deserves food and water.
Well,
Ideally, as he rots away in a prison forever because accountability.
there we go.
This is also a really important thing to help me learn to trust myself again. When I came out and my world got turned upside down, I didn't know who to trust, including myself. By seeing myself as human in this nuanced way, I was able to look at myself with more empathy for my shortcomings. It also helped me more fully celebrate my strengths. But also, eventually, helped me learn to trust other people. To be honest, it's still something that I'm working through for reasons including but not limited to religious trauma, but I do believe that most people aren't actively trying to hurt me. That some people really do have my best interest in heart, even when they do things that don't feel right to me. We can do things that are good based on our morality. We can do things that are aligned with our values or bring us closer to a goal. There are definitely people that do more good than ill, and vice versa, but underneath it all, we are just people. Dobson is an evil fucking person, but he is just a person. He lives and breathes and poops and does taxes. It's never an excuse for bad behavior. To me, it's actually all the more reason to hold people accountable. It's easier to write someone off as bad. It's much harder and much more important to see their humanity in all the fucked up stuff that they do. Tactically, it's a really good way to fight against fascism. It's really good to help de-radicalize people. It's also how we navigate relationships and create space for healing and reconciliation. I really hate conversations around cancel culture because no one's really faced any consequences for being canceled. Louis C.K. is still performing, right? Harvey Weinstein's may or may not be in prison at any given moment. But there is a tendency interpersonally to write off people when they hurt us. And sometimes we should. I am not interested in reconciliation with Saul. But sometimes we do owe it to people to give them another chance, to see their humanity and their fuck-uppedness, to seek justice but love mercy. To be seen in humanity, imperfections and all, is incredibly valuable and incredibly vulnerable. Number 8, ritual and meaning are important. I love this one. I think a lot about ritual. For a very long time, I rejected anything that felt close to spirituality. It felt unsafe. It felt violent. Honestly, it felt a little bit stupid. Like, why are we doing these things? Early in grad school, we would do regular check-ins about how we were doing in these different dimensions of self, biologically, psychologically, socially, but also spiritually. And a number of times, I avoided answering the spirituality part, or I just straight up said, I am not spiritual, so I am not answering that. I still don't really consider myself a spiritual person, but I am much less hostile and much more open to connecting with others through conversations about spirituality. To me, it's about the meaning they find in it rather than the label of the belief. Sure, Kevin and Saul are both Christians, but lumping them together like that betrays the canyon between their beliefs. I don't have to believe in God to hear what you mean when you say God made you special and he loves you very much. I don't believe that an actual God exists and loves me, but I hear you saying, you are special, you are loved, and I'm glad to see you. I can respect that. I do believe that humans have some innate spiritual drive. We can squabble with the word spiritual, but we all have a drive in us to be part of something bigger, that feeling that you were talking about earlier. When I stand on a mountain ridge in the rain, I feel part of the natural world. When I do shrooms, I feel connected to the synecdoche of humanity. When I'm with boyfriend, it's more than just the two of us in a room. Our relationship is bigger than just us. The whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. That's what feels like people mean when they say spirituality to me.
You said whole.
I sure did.
I feel some sense of that whenever I watch TikToks about planets. Like NASA pictures of different planets.
Yeah.
Usually I've had a little bit of a gummy at those times, but I do feel...
Substances help.
Yeah. But I do feel like, holy shit, that's big.
Mm-hmm. And I'm a part of that.
Yeah.
Religion and spirituality are our attempts to grapple with unanswerable existential questions. What is the meaning of life? Are we a part of something bigger than us? How can we know right from wrong? What happens when we die? Religion and spirituality can be an important way for people to make sense of a seemingly chaotic and uncaring universe. It's a lot nicer to think of the universe as loving. And also, I don't think that's inherently incorrect. Again, it's unanswerable. A lot of people I know are very into astrology. To be diplomatic, I am not. Mm-hmm. But clearly it means a lot to people I love and respect. I could be an asshole about it and make fun of it, or I could try to understand what is so appealing about it, to understand what meanings people are making from it and engage with respect and curiosity. One outcome makes for much better relationships and also a much richer sense of the world. I don't know or particularly care what it means that I'm a Scorpio, but people I know and love and respect do. It helps them better understand me, and they're making a bid for connection.
That's right.
I'm a little bit obstinate about this, but Brooke, what does it mean that I'm a Scorpio?
Let me clarify something really quick. I don't actually really believe in astrology either. Oh God, we're about to get in so much trouble with so many of our coworkers. I agree, though, that it is a good way to connect with yourself and with others. Mm-hmm. So if I read something about, surprise, Virgos, I don't know. It's not like I think that's all real, but it might give me an opportunity to question, like, am I like that? Do I think some of those things? Like, in what ways am I like that, right? And I will tell you that as a therapist, it's a very easy way to connect with clients who are into that.
Yeah. And
I did a whole astrology genogram once, right?
I've done that too.
Yeah, it was fun. Like, what's everybody's sign? What does that mean? And right, I don't know if it really means that, whatever, really, but it means that to the person, and that's the way they're going to describe their family or whatever, right? And so it's important. I do think there are some similarities between people. Like, you can group people in a million different ways, but you and I could be grouped in a way, right?
Sure. Okay,
Karina and I are both, we're going to get Karina on the podcast. Readers, don't worry, you're going to love her. But we are both Virgos, and we joke about that all the time, and we have Virgo tendencies, right? But also we are like two white women of a similar age, and that's probably what is more likely going on, sure. Right? And so, you know, there's different ways to group each other. Okay, but the question you asked me was, you are a Scorpio.
Yes.
Which I didn't believe for like the first year that I knew you. I was like, how could that even be? Now I totally get it. I love Scorpios. Now I'm going to negate everything I just said.
Go for it.
Scorpios are like fun. They are highly like opinionated. They are deeply loyal. They are bridge burners, which is pretty good for this podcast.
For this episode specifically.
Yeah. And they are like big on justice, like things being just. And they're outspoken usually. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of a Scorpio. I love Scorpios. A lot of my closest friends are Scorpios. Virgo, which is what I am, is the quieter, more instigator version of that.
A number of therapists that I help train will do presentations on astrology, and every year, like, kind of sticks to my brain. The image I have of Virgos is just like stirring the pot, mostly. Yeah, they do other things too, but
yeah, the thing that I always laughed at about a Virgo is I saw a TikTok where somebody was like, I'm a teenager and we have to give presentations at school, and I just did mine, and these girls were laughing and making fun of me, and so I found out what their presentation was going to be. I learned every single thing, and now I'm just going to ask them questions that they can't possibly answer. I was like, that is so Virgo coded.
Incredible.
Yeah. You are a Scorpio. Scorpios are also a little sassy.
I mean, I would say I am that.
Yeah.
I was actually going to say I put as much stock into astrology as I do the Myers-Briggs type inventory, but I actually have personal beef with the Myers-Briggs test, so I actually prefer astrology to the...
Fuck the Myers-Briggs. That thing is not real at all.
I had to take it once in college, and my scores were literally right down the middle. In college, after I'd come out, after I'd done a bunch of this reconstruction, and the teacher looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Oh, it just means you must not know yourself."
Oh, God. What Harry Potter house are you?
I haven't taken the test in so long.
You're a Gryffindor.
That's what I've gotten historically, but
yeah,
is it because that's what I am, or because that's what I want?
No, you are.
Answer to get a certain outcome.
You're a Gryffindor. You know I'm a Slytherin.
And that's why we get along so well.
Yeah. I think that I only get along with people who are Slytherin rising. Like, even if you're a Hufflepuff, one of my very best friends who listens to this podcast, shout out Chrissy, is a Hufflepuff but Slytherin rising.
That's an interesting combination. That's language I understand.
Yeah. It's more common than you think. Anyway, cut all of that.
I'm going to keep some of it. It's great. To engage in these conversations, I think requires a level of humility. I do think that there are things that we could learn from every person and every belief system. I don't have to be Jewish to find value in a belief system built around questioning and preserving a minority opinion. I don't have to be pagan to appreciate how they build relationships with the natural world. I don't have to be Christian to find comfort in the idea of loving your neighbor as yourself. Recently, I've gotten the habit of saying I agree with this metaphorically, which isn't exactly what I mean. Sure, I don't believe in like one big man in the sky physically creating me, but I'm down for saying you're unique, you're not a mistake, you have worth just by existing, right? Like that, the feeling I'm down, even if the literal interpretation I'm not. Editing Jake here. One of the most impactful experiences to this end happened when I was in graduate school. One of my favorite professors ever, and one of the most brilliant people I know, was raised and trained in evangelical spaces. And she always made me feel so deeply seen and understood. I was at a point in my deconstruction journey where I could really start trying to understand her, not because I wanted to find value in other evangelical or ex-evangelical ideals, not as some intellectual exercise, but because she cared, honestly and deeply, for me. This is also one of the many reasons why perhaps the biggest lesson I've learned in my deconstruction journey is we need each other. Our relationships and communities are integral parts of our lives, and it's in these relationships that we can learn and grow and change and become more of ourselves. Iron sharpens iron. My deconstruction journey isn't one of a lone hero figuring it all out. I'm forever grateful for and indebted to the people who cared for me. The librarians in high school who let me eat lunch with them so I didn't have to be alone in the cafeteria. The Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence in DC. The leather community all over the world. My graduate school professors, my coworkers, my collaborators, and yes, my family. I am who I am today because of them. The best piece of advice I can give anyone, especially people in their own deconstruction journey, is find and treasure the relationships that see you, that get you. Leaving the church was so disorienting to me because I had lost one of the most important communities and some of the most important relationships to me. But you aren't alone. Whether it's other evangelicals or other religious communities, or queer people, or support group, or book club, there are people out there who will care for you and will support you. Okay, back to the show. This is really what broke me out of my angry atheist phase officially. I'm still not always the most comfortable with Christianity, to be honest. The scars run deep, but I'm also not actively hostile towards it either. Like anything, it can be used for good or bad. Dobson and Martin Luther King Jr. were both Christians. It doesn't inherently mean any of those things. Also, ritual is a very important way that we make meaning. The more I've done therapy, the more I really value ritual. I couldn't find a good definition of ritual online. I have my own, but Brooke, how do you understand ritual?
Ritual is like a pattern of behavior or a behavior we engage in that is, we need Porter for this.
Porter would be great for this.
Yeah, that is like comforting, soothing, meaningful.
Yeah.
Right? So like funerals are
exactly.
ritual. They happen a lot around milestones, rituals, right? Weddings are rituals.
Mm-hmm.
It's the sort of traditions that go into it.
Yeah. I think about graduations as a really good example. Nothing changes when you walk across a stage. You don't get anything. But the act of doing it feels meaningful. It feels like that is the end to your academic journey in that place. The definition I wrote down, ritual to me is the intentional doing of something specifically to create meaning.
You know what I do sometimes? When I work from home, I light a little candle and then say the names of all the clients I'm going to see that day. And then that's like a little ritual. And then at the end of the day, I just blow it out.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's excellent. If your days blur together, if you go through life without many highs or lows, everything just kind of mindlessly slides into the next thing, you're depressed.
Yeah, that's right.
My anarchist self really doesn't like doing tradition for tradition's sake, but I really value the idea of making our own rituals to create our own meaning. But you don't have the time to make homemade meaning. Store-bought is fine.
Incredible.
Rituals give us peaks and valleys, ebbs and flows. They help us mark the passage of time. They don't have to be spiritual, or you don't have to mean them in a spiritual way. Some people I know regularly practice prayer, not to talk to God, but to make space for reflection and gratitude every day. That's a ritual. Personally, every New Year's Eve, I set intentions for the year. It's a little ritual that I do. It takes like an hour on New Year's Eve. It's silly and objectively meaningless, but it's meaningful to me, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, and by the way, if it's meaningful to you, that really, truly is all that matters. I don't know what I'm going to call it because altar feels weird, but I made a shelf on a bookshelf where I have photographs and memorabilia from people who I've lost in my life. My sister was like, well, you can't have pictures of yourself on it because that's bad luck. And I was like, according to who?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I can do whatever I want. It's my shelf. Right? Cut this whole thing out. It's trash,
no,
but
I think it's great. I think
it's truly like, I'm like, I don't believe that.
Yes.
These are the pictures I like with the people I lost.
Exactly. My whole approach now to religion and spirituality is about trying to understand the meanings that people make from it, to listen to what they are feeling and not necessarily what they are saying. That I think is so much more meaningful, to overuse a word here. It makes me feel connected to people and also like soothes a lot of the parts that still get riled up in me about religious trauma.
Yeah. Meaning is also, and there's books about this, but meaning is also the sort of biggest, if we're going to say stage of grief, right? Like it's what eventually people come to, or where we want them to come to is like what was the purpose of this life and this death, right? And that's why you see a lot of people becoming advocates or working for organizations that have something to do with, an illness or something that their loved one went through.
Absolutely. Even jaded atheists, secular humanists like myself can benefit from tapping into our sense of spirituality and engaging in meaningful ritual. This was, I think, a really big lesson for me to learn in this lesson of deconstruction. Lesson 9, we're almost done. I say that because it is 11:30 right now.
And the lights just went out.
It's
so scary when that happens. You have to walk me downstairs.
Gladly. Lesson 9, evangelicalism will always be a part of me in some way. Once I had worked through the acute stages of grief, the anger, the denial, the depression, the blasphemy, I was able to acknowledge how evangelicalism continues to shape my life and my thinking, even when I'm very much not a part of it anymore. My values now are not that far off from my values then. The reasons that I wanted to be a pastor overlap significantly with the reasons that I am now a queer sex therapist. A little bit less God, a little bit more sex, but most of the other values are pretty strong. The desire to help people, to provide care in intimate and informed ways, to help people in ways less inhibited by capitalism and greed. This is my job, but I am not a therapist for the money.
What money?
That's for goddamn sure.
Oh.
In fact, in some ways, I feel sometimes like I am living more in line with those values now than when I was an evangelical. Things like running a low or no cost support group for sex workers feels much more aligned with Jesus' teachings than criminalizing pornography was. But also, the things that I love and the ways that I think were just fundamentally shaped by evangelicalism. It is, in a lot of ways, my native tongue. I still love VeggieTales. I still use biblical phrases in my speech and thinking because that's just how my brain works. Seek justice, love mercy was one that I mentioned earlier in this episode that just came to me. I was like, oh, right, that's also like a Bible verse. My favorite Christmas tradition is singing Silent Night by candlelight in a sanctuary. I don't know that I believe in a soul per se, but the idea that we are more than just skin and bones and organs, there's something unique and divine within us. That still feels true. Coming to this place of acceptance, though, was confusing and also frustrating. At the start of the pandemic, my mom had to go on a flight. There really wasn't another choice. It was necessary. She and I are both low-key and also sometimes not low-key, pretty scared of flying. We didn't have a vaccine for COVID, so any time spent in a small confined space with strangers felt really risky. And the reasons for her travel were not ideal, and my mom was in a lot of pain. And so I prayed for her. I hadn't prayed in years. I definitely didn't believe in God, but she was scared. I was scared for her. It was something that felt meaningful that I could do. For a while, I felt very conflicted about it and weird and felt confusing. Now it feels sweet and also weird. That's okay. I'm doing the show in part to honor this part of myself. I am still fluent in the language of evangelicalism. Deconstruction is a weird, ongoing process. Like most things in life, it doesn't really end. I also don't hate all those parts of me in my experience. Some things are cringy. Some things are painful. Some things are and were objectively wrong. But some things are going to Oman with my best friend. Some things are bonding with my dad at Skillet concerts. Some things are baking ziggurat cakes with my mom the year I was sort of homeschooled. Dobson ruined enough of my childhood. He doesn't get to retroactively ruin the good parts too. If, in hindsight, I hated all of my time being an evangelical, I would have to hate my entire childhood. That is not a level of anger I'm willing to or able to carry. It also just doesn't feel honest. It's complicated.
Both and.
Both and. Rejecting black and white thinking. Lesson number 10 of 11. Evangelicalism, capitalism, and nationalism have fused into one hydra entity that is destroying the world and everyone in it. I've always been a person who cares about social justice and equality, even and especially when I was an evangelical. In some ways, evangelical rhetoric is built around the ideas of equality. We are all God's children, and we're all sinners. No sin is worse than another. We are all equally guilty. I also grew up as a teenager on Tumblr, which is a fact that now makes me feel quite old. I learned about pride flags and feminism and racism through random and unknown teenage girls. And I assumed that it was largely teenage girls. I also grew up in the era of woke. I remember watching the primaries when Obama became the official nominee and watching his first inauguration. My mom made me watch it, and I'm glad that she did. I watched the Ferguson protests in 2014 when cops murdered Michael Brown. I watched the Baltimore protest in 2015 when the cops murdered Freddie Gray. At that time, I was also living close enough to Baltimore that I experienced the fallout among my peers and neighbors. I was dealing with racism at that time. Obergefell v. Hodges, the Supreme Court case that created marriage equality across the United States, was decided when I was in high school. I grew up loving the outdoors, and I was fortunate enough to see nature all over the world. Climate change has been a really salient crisis throughout my whole life. Coming out was my first personal direct experience with violence and oppression. It also made me question the power structures that I thought were correct. My first year in college was 2016. Trump won the very first election I could vote in, which was pretty radicalizing. Contrary to what Dobson and evangelicals might say, it wasn't my college professors that radicalized me. I was further left than many of them. At one point I took a class called The Philosophy of Sex, and the professor was a TERF.
God.
Who said that mandatory consent was bad because it deprived men of their rape fantasies.
What?
Yeah, not a great class. Interesting class.
No.
Really made me think about a lot of things really seriously. Not a good professor.
Oh my God.
What did radicalize me was talking with marginalized people, was seeing them and their experience in the ways that they were so unfairly fucked over. People who couldn't go to college because of the cost. People who worked 3 jobs but still needed food stamps. Women who were sexually assaulted throughout their entire careers but needed to stay silent for fear of retribution. People with a DACA status who were at least 3 months away from being deported to a country they didn't know. Coming out didn't open my eyes to oppression, but it did reframe it and make me much more open to hearing people with whom I thought I might disagree. I had missed so much already, who knows what I might be missing now. I also found video essays like the YouTube channels ContraPoints and PhilosophyTube. I found podcasts like Behind the Bastards and You're Wrong About. These sources of media filled in the gaps and helped dispel myths of white supremacy, patriarchy, and capitalism by giving me a theoretical and historical framework that were just more intellectually honest. And in doing this work, I learned a lot. But I also really had to look at my own complicity in these systems of oppression. It was really easy for me to look at my evangelical days and be like, oh, thank goodness I'm one of the good ones now. It was much harder, and also much more important, to look at how he's still perpetuating and engaging in these systems. I got to go to school due to the GI Bill, for instance. This is money that the government gives military members to go to school. My dad had transferred his benefits to me and Kevin. The GI Bill was historically only given to white service members. Pretty actively and explicitly discriminatory. The modern iterations don't, but 10 years of history doesn't really cushion the blow. I love school and academia, but these systems are so classist and racist. What did it mean for me, a pacifist and someone who cares about climate change, that my entire life was spent on US military bases and around nukes? I might have been a child, but I wasn't absolved of responsibility, especially since my family is still a part of these systems. And these systems are important to my family. A huge reason why Tyler is alive and doing okay is because of the healthcare that the military gives to my family. Being a part of these systems doesn't condemn a person to an eternity of hell. It's complicated and hard, but that nuance doesn't soften my resolve. If anything, it makes it all the more important to fight these systems wherever possible. I hope that you feel that I've been nuanced and reflective, because I've tried to be in this process, in this episode, and in the past 2 episodes. So the fact that this point here, these things are destroying us and we need to fight them, is unnuanced, I think should be all the more stark. The intertwinings of these systems are a cancer on society. It is traumatizing us. It is shooting our kids at home and bombing them abroad. It is destroying our planet in ever-accelerating ways. It's making a bunch of people just a fucking bummer. Race was invented in tandem with capitalism at a time of Protestant Christian supremacy. They are fundamentally intertwined, and they must be stopped. Yes, hashtag not all Christians, but the political forces that drive them cannot be allowed to run unchecked. We don't need, for instance, liberals censoring a House member for shouting at a fascist dictator. These systems aren't inevitable, and they can be beaten. Perhaps the biggest lesson I've learned in my deconstruction is life can be lived in countless ways. There are so many ways to live a happy, healthy, productive, connective life. And just because things are one way now doesn't mean that they have to be or will be forever. It sounds very corny, but our greatest motivation, our greatest strength, I think, is our love for each other. Hate and ketamine are a potent combination, to be sure. Fear can make people do seemingly insane things, but those things also erode you. As movements, they destroy themselves. White supremacy is inherently a project of all-consuming destruction. Love is not a finite resource. The only thing that makes people more insane than hate is love. To be loved is life-changing. To be seen in the fullness of her humanity and all the joys and sorrows, strengths and shortcomings is transformative. You can be more than yourself. Now, these three things remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. It is not our greatest weapon, though. That would be oil rigs. That's going to be censored. And finally, the very last lesson, number 11, that I have learned in my time in deconstruction. Sometimes the things that you think are bad are worse than you ever remembered. And sometimes they're so bad, you have to make a whole podcast about it. Lesson number 11 in my deconstruction, I've learned how much I hate James Dobson.
I hate James Dobson, too.
Brooke, not to put you on the spot, what have you learned in this year doing this project?
Oh, my God.
Making a list of 11 points.
11:46 p.m. I am not drunk. I am going to go right to bed. Whoa, God.
What I learned in boating school is...
I've learned that this is really just all about control.
Yeah.
And how it's designed for one specific... I mean, it's designed for James Dobson.
Mm-hmm.
White man, straight man. I have learned the nuance of growing up in this environment and deconstructing and reconstructing, and how I mean, I knew it, but I have seen it firsthand through you, right? And through learning all of this, and from the people who've been commenting on everything, how painful it is, not just because of some of the harmful things that are taught, but to reconstruct your understanding of your own life, right? How painful that is. I have learned how to dare to discipline. Oh, we switched. I've learned a lot, really. And the main thing, even though this is a tricky word, is like just that there's this other side to it, and there's so much resilience in it, right? And that just like anything else, like you can do what you did and what so many of the people who have commented on this have done, and question things, right?
Yeah.
Feel things and get to the other side of it.
Yeah. And even if the process isn't done, there is another side.
Yeah.
There's the other side to it.
And you know what else I learned? That I hate James Dobson.
This fucker. Let me tell you what. like, obviously, I made a podcast called I Hate James Dobson. I knew I wasn't a fan going into it, but like having to read his shit for a year and a half at this point, man, he's the fucking worst.
Yeah, he is the worst. What? We should talk about something else next time.
Okay.
Kitties?
That'd be fun. We could do a whole episode about Skillet.
No offense. I don't think I need to know anything more about Skillet.
You really don't. They're not that interesting.
I think I get it. Skillet. Have we talked about what's it called? Uh-oh. Losing all my words. My Immortal, that band. What are they called?
Evanescence?
Yes. They're a Christian band, aren't they?
They are a band made up of Christians, which is a little bit different.
We've talked about this.
Like, The Fray is a band made up of Christians, but they're...
The Fray is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that just made something make a lot more sense in my head, but we're not going to go there.
Skillet is explicitly trying to, like, launder Christianity into the mainstream, as if Christianity is not already mainstream. Evanescence isn't so much trying to do that.
Did you know that I know every single word to My Immortal?
That does not surprise me. I did not know that. That does not surprise me in the slightest. Readers, thank you for being on this journey with us this past year. It has been bananas, and I'm very thankful for every second of it. You've been so generous with your time, with your engagement, with your feedback, with your ratings and reviews, even the one-star ones that make me laugh very much. We know you have many choices in these friendly skies, but we thank you for flying I Hate James Dobson. Brooke.
Yes.
Thank you for being on this wild ride with me.
Oh my God, you are so welcome.
I'm already working through our next Dobson book. We have a Duggars episode in the works. Yes. But Even if this podcast ended today, I get hit by a train on the way home, I'll be forever grateful for you trusting me in this endeavor, for being by my side as I try to figure out audio engineering, and for being such a good fucking friend.
You're such a good fucking friend, and I have something to tell you. I'm very proud of you. You've learned a lot. You've done a lot. And if you get hit by a train on the way home, I will raise the train flag for you.
Incredible. Train pride.
And I will think of train pride for you all the time.
I Hate James Dobson is a labor of love, written, recorded, edited, and produced by me, Jake. I'm honored to be joined by my amazing co-host, Brooke. If you're enjoying the show, please consider rating and reviewing it. And if you want to connect with us more, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Reddit, and Blue Sky at I Hate James Dobson, and unfortunately still on Twitter at I Hate JDobs. If you want to email us, you can do so at ihatejamesdobson@gmail.com. Special thanks, as always, to Drew, Lindsay, DJ, and Jack. Our theme music is by Mood Maze, and the song is called Trendsetter. Thank you for enjoying the show. I'll probably cut this part, but I might keep it because I think it's very funny. As far as I know, Kevin is not queer, but he is reflective, inquisitive, passionate, and empathetic in ways that understand and support queerness. So Kevin, I'm officially giving you one pass to say faggot. You've earned it, buddy.
And Kevin, I am taking it immediately away. Don't do that.
I laughed very hard when I wrote that last night.
That is funny.